I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Just moments after Special Counsel Jack Smith's motion for a limited gag order in the federal prosecution of Donald Trump in Washington, D.C. in connection with the case involving Donald Trump's attempt to overthrow the results of the 2020 election, Donald Trump responded to a motion calling out Donald Trump's threats on prosecutors and judges in the community. Trump responded by threatening and attacking Special Counsel Jack Smith, the Department of Justice, and the FBI. I want to show you what Donald Trump's been posting on his social media platform, and I want to compare that to what President Joe Biden has been posting, saying, and doing. Folks, the contrast could not be clearer. Let's just get into it. Here's what Donald Trump posted moments after the unsealing of Special Counsel Jack Smith's gag order motion. Trump writes, Biden prosecutor deranged Jack Smith has asked the court to limit 45th president and leading Republican nominee by more than 50 points and beating Dems! Donald J. Trump's public statements, and he puts that all in caps and referring to himself. So I'm campaigning for president against an incompetent person who has weaponized the DOJ and FBI to go after his political opponent, and I'm not allowed to comment. They leak, lie, and sue, and they won't allow me to speak. How else would I explain that Jack Smith is deranged or Crooked Joe is incompetent? You are a criminal defendant for trying to overthrow our democracy. You are not above the law. Criminal defendants have a First Amendment right, but that First Amendment right doesn't mean they can threaten and attack prosecutors or the judge or the community or witnesses. That is what Special Counsel Jack Smith's motion is limited to: extrajudicial threats that are attempting to create chaos and bias amongst the potential jury pool. That would be the same for any other criminal defendant. It'd be the same for any other American. You can't engage in threats, incite riots, attempt to overthrow our democracy and say, hey, First Amendment, First Amendment. No, of course you have a freedom of speech, right? But the freedom of speech does not allow you to go and commit crimes. Show you the next post. Donald Trump writes, the all-electric car is a disaster for both the United Auto Workers and the American consumer. They will all be built in China and they are too expensive, don't go far enough, take too long to charge, and pose various dangers under certain atmospheric conditions. If this happens, the United Auto Workers will be wiped out, along with all other auto workers in the United States. The all-electric car policy is about as dumb as open borders and no voter ID. It is a complete and total disaster. So, when Donald Trump says things like that, you always know the exact opposite is true. Donald Trump and these MAGA Republicans are always the best counter indicator. What do they support? Who do they say are winning? And almost certainly the opposite is usually true. Here are the facts. America needs to gain a competitive advantage internationally, and doing things like allowing the rollout of electric vehicles, among other things, to spur our economy is part of a broader manufacturing boom that is currently taking place. There's actually a reason why China's economy currently is slumping. That is a fact. While the United States of America's economy is the top of all G7 nations, period. And the reason is because President Biden's economic policies are working. And I know Donald Trump likes to have this idealized image of what his economy was like before COVID. That's just simply not the case. Every indicator was we were headed for a recession even before COVID hit. And then you don't get mulligans. The way Donald Trump handled COVID and still talks about Dr. Fauci and wanting to lock him up and all of these things is disqualifying. That is not how leaders handle a crisis. A crisis hit our shores, and Donald Trump told us to inject bleach in our veins. That is utterly, utterly despicable and utterly disqualifying. Here, Donald Trump reposts Marjorie Taylor Greene, who called for secession earlier this week. I know the media loves normalizing politicians calling for secession and just reposting secession tweets. Here's what Marjorie Taylor Greene writes. We're going to drag Biden and everyone who covered up his crimes through the headlines day after day. What are you, a mobster? Who talks like this? You know, we've covered all this Lauren Boebert scandal, George Santos, spineless Kevin McCarthy. Who speaks like this? It's just disgraceful language and bullying and hate. This is not what America is about, people. We're going to drag Biden and everyone who covered up his crimes through the headlines every day. What are you, a mobster? What are you, a mobster? We've gone through all of the depositions of all of the people, all of the witnesses you've called in your bogus investigations into President Biden, and not one substantiates that President Biden engaged in any conduct at all ever that constitutes any form of crime, any form of impeachable offense. Lots of other Republicans are saying that as well, yet this is what they do. This is what they say. They don't care about evidence. They want to turn America basically into Russia. They want to turn America into people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert and Matt Gaetz taking away your freedoms. That is what they are trying to do. Here is a video of Donald Trump where he comments on Special Counsel Jack Smith's filing of the motion for a limited gag order. Play the clip.
Because in a true sense, I'm being indicted for you. Thanks a lot, everybody. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. And did you see today that deranged Jack Smith, he's the prosecutor, he's a deranged person, wants to take away my rights under the First Amendment, wants to take away my right of speaking freely and openly. Never forget, our enemies want to stop us because we are the only ones that can stop them. They want to take away my freedom because I will never let them take away your freedom. I'm standing here.
And by the way, this is what Donald Trump says. Just think about this statement. Like, remember when it was disqualifying if a politician couldn't spell potato or go woohoo, in a weird way? Donald Trump thinks that you require ID to buy a loaf of bread. Like, just think about the things that he's saying. And this isn't even the most dangerous thing that he's said. It's just weird and out of what are they talking about? Play this clip.
They're bad at policy. They have no idea what they're doing. They have open borders. They have no voter ID. They don't want voter ID. I saw on the television one of these characters. There shouldn't be voter ID. Now, you have voter ID to buy a loaf of bread. You have ID to buy a loaf of bread. You have everything. You have pictures. When they had their Democrat National Convention, they had a picture of the biggest thing I've ever seen. They had fingerprints. They had everything you could possibly know about that person. That was to get into their room with thousands of people. It was like a billboard. It was actually very much like my mugshot, if you want to know the truth. Thinking about it just right
now. And here is Donald Trump celebrating the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Play the clip.
But I went, and it was a beautiful day. 1 year ago, in a victory that conservatives had been seeking for 50 years. 50 years they've been fighting for this. Those same Supreme Court justices and the Supreme Court ruled to end the moral and constitutional atrocity known as Roe v. Wade. Very important. Nobody thought that could be done. And so important, and it's not discussed right, it's not talked about right. To be honest, Republicans don't know how to discuss the subject, but they're the radicals, not us. The Democrats are the radicals. So now pro-lifers have a tremendous power to negotiate. You had no power whatsoever. There wasn't a thing you could do. But now you have tremendous power to negotiate, which they didn't have before the ruling. This moves the issue back to the states. Everybody wanted it to go back to the states. All legal scholars on both sides, they wanted it back to the states.
Okay, and I want to compare that right now to President Biden. This is President Joe Biden speaking about the auto workers strike, and President Biden being very clear, saying that he believes that they should go further to ensure record corporate profits mean record contract for auto workers. That's what he wants to see. He's great. Corporations make profits, please. But also, can you please share that wealth with the workers as well, who form the backbone? Can we make sure Americans are fairly compensated for their work and have good working conditions, great working conditions, that they could work with dignity? Here, play this clip of President Biden.
I respect workers' right to use their options under the collective bargaining system, and I understand the workers' frustration. Over generations, auto workers sacrificed so much to keep the industry alive and strong, especially through the economic crisis and the pandemic. Workers deserve a fair share of the benefits they helped create for an enterprise. I do appreciate that the parties have been working around the clock. And when I first called them at the very first day of their negotiations, I said, please stay at the table as long as you can to try to work this out. And they've been around the clock, and the companies have made some significant offers. But I believe they should go further to ensure record corporate profits mean record contracts for the UAW. I'm going to say that again. Record corporate profits, which they have, should be shared by record contracts for the UAW.
By the way, I want to show you this. This is part of a college tour that Kamala Harris, Vice President Harris, is going on. You want to see how fired up Gen Z is right now? Take a look at this. And here, President Biden, you saw what Donald Trump celebrating, overturning Roe v. Wade, calling prosecutors deranged. What is President Biden talking about? He's talking about, look, when it comes to reducing debt, just look at our records. Look who actually reduced debt and the deficit. Democrats, President Biden did by trillions. Who increased the debt by $7 trillion? Donald Trump. These are just facts, folks. Play this clip of President Biden.
When it comes to reducing deficit, let's compare the records a little bit. Under my predecessor, you remember the self-professed king of debt? Well, it turned out he was. He's actually the emperor of debt. He created more debt than any other president did in 1 year. No, I'm serious. For starters, when he passed that $2 trillion tax cut, skewed to the wealthy and big corporations, they didn't pay for a penny of it. The end result was that it has ballooned the national debt by nearly 40%. Over a 200-year accumulated debt, they ballooned it by 40%. Well, I've taken a different approach with the help of your delegation. And I'm not being solicitous when I say that. You have the best delegation in the country. And that's not just because my whole family's from Baltimore. Look, we just cut the budget deficit by they helped me cut the deficit by $160 billion. $160 billion. You know how we did it? By giving Medicare the power to negotiate for lower prescription drug costs.
I just want to show you that. I mean, it cannot be more clear, in my opinion, the difference, the distinction between Donald Trump and President Biden. Let me know what you think in the comments below. But folks, large media networks, they've dug in their heels to normalize this fascist crap, okay? They have. We show you all the videos about that. Let's keep growing this network. We need to get bigger than large media networks, and we need to do so immediately right now. Make sure you hit the thumbs up button. It's free to do that. Subscribe. It's free to do that. Leave comments. That's helpful for the algorithm as well. Share your thoughts about this video. If you want to support the growth of this network, go to patreon.com/MeidasTouch, patreon.com/MeidasTouch. Have a great day.
At MeidasTouch, we are unapologetically pro-democracy, and we demand justice and accountability. That's why we're spreading our message to Convict 45. That's right, gear up right now with your Convict 45 tees and pins at store.MeidasTouch.com. That's store.MeidasTouch.com.